Hello there, welcome back to Jennie Designs with Paper. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. I'm working in my art journal, so get comfy and let's get crafty. So the month of July, I know it's not July anymore, but these are the weekly word prompts for the month of July for the Mission Inspiration Facebook group challenge. The words were sleep, numbers, freedom, and illuminate. So come along while I turn these four weekly prompts into one art journal page. So to begin with, I have printed my prompt card and put it off to the side. I did go through my stash and grabbed a 12 by 12 piece of blue pattern paper that has some nice kind of light blue design on the front of it. Originally, my plan was to glue these two pieces of paper together to kind of make them thicker and stronger because it is a lightweight pattern paper. I did not end up doing that. Spoiler alert, it wasn't going to be enough. I did come up with another solution. But first, I'm going to add a layer of clear gesso onto this piece of paper. I chose clear gesso to prep the paper because I wanted that the pattern on the paper, the background, to still be visible. If I went over it with white gesso, it would not be. So clear gesso gives this page a little bit of tooth for other things to stick to, but it also saves that background. I did get a little thick there in a couple places and had to pull some water on, get my brush wet a little bit to thin that out and spread it out. But I did go ahead and get that layer of gesso spread out, and then I'm going to heat set it. I'm going to heat set it so that it dries quickly because, well, as much as I like crafting, I don't want to watch paint dry. And that's basically what that is. So now that now that the page is dry, I've realized that 2 layers of that is not going to be substantial enough for what I want to add to this page. So I pulled out a piece of a store brand watercolor paper that is not real great for watercoloring, and I trimmed it down to the same size as my art journal, and I'm going to use some really strong double-sided adhesive along the edges. I'm going to put it as close to the edge as I possibly can along all 4 edges, and then I can just lay that pattern paper right down on top of it. This, like I said, is a very strong adhesive. You could use liquid adhesive as well, but I was a little bit nervous about liquid glue on the back of that pattern paper because it was so thin. So I did not put even glue in the middle, which I know sometimes I do to stick 2 pieces of paper together because liquid glue is a strong adhesive. But again, I was just kind of nervous about the thinness of that pattern paper. So now that we've got that bulked up, we can move on. And the first word in the first weekly word was sleep, which is why I chose a blue pattern paper. And to kind of create that illusion or the nod to sleep, I pulled out cobalt colored archival ink and a cloud stencil. So this little cloud stencil, I think, is a My Favorite Thing stencil. And I'm just going to take these little edges and go all the way up my art journal page. One thing I forget every time I pull out this stencil or a grass stencil or a slope stencil is you got to start on the stencil and ink off in order to get that look you're looking for. Otherwise, it's kind of a reverse look. And sometimes I forget that. But that's okay. We're just going to keep on going, keep on going, keep on going until we have clouds all the way from the bottom to the top of the page. And I really liked how that turned out. And then to add that kind of sleep or dreamy kind of, what's the right word? Illusion? I don't know. I'm adding some black archival ink around the edges with a foam sponge. And I'm not going in super far. It just kind of gives the framework for the page, but also kind of adds to that aesthetic that I was going for. I also used that foam sponge to go around the edges to hide the white edge of that pattern paper and the white edge of the watercolor paper, especially because there was one corner where it was kind of poking out like it wasn't either cut exactly right straight or lined up properly. So I also wanted to add some stars, and I have this Diana Weekly Media Gloss Spray. And so I put the page into my splat box, but the nozzle on my spray was stuck, like it wouldn't go down. So I just pulled the lid out, or the little plunger thing out, and just flicked all the paint off of it. Totally works. And then the blobs of spray paint or whatever you want to call it, are a little thicker. And some of them I even blotted up with baby wipe. But it has the effect I wanted. There's a little bit of white sparkle in the background there. So the next weekly word was numbers, and I pulled from my washi tape stash this roll of tape that has numbers all over it. And I didn't know exactly where and how I wanted to put this on. I just knew that this was how I wanted to add the numbers to my page. Like, I went through my craft stuff. I have some 1-inch number dies. I have some much smaller number dies. I have stamps. I have rub-ons. There's just a lot of things I could do. And in the end, I decided I really wanted the washi tape. So then I just had to figure out how to make it work for my page. Now, the bottom, I don't love. I didn't love when I did it. It did not work for me. The top, I liked how I wrapped it around the edge. I felt like that was a little bit cleaner. So I did that with the bottom. I pulled the bottom pieces off and kind of folded them around the edge. In order to do that, I had to slide that top piece over quite a bit. It just was not looking like I wanted it to look. So what I ended up doing is sliding that top piece over so that it was much shorter than the bottom piece. And then it gave kind of that slope, mountainy kind of slope. So I repeated that with the bottom pieces and actually created a third line there. And that, it looks like the blue is on top of the numbers that way, right? Like it's torn paper edge, and that I really liked. Washi tape does not have a very permanent hold or permanent stick to it, so I did go over the washi tape with some Liquitex medium or matte fluid medium. And while I was doing that, I just went over the entire page because why not? It's going to need some anyway, so why not? And once I had that done, I can move on to the next word. And the third weekly word was freedom. So July in the United States is freedom, right? I found a picture of the Statue of Liberty with the American flag kind of draped around it or kind of projected onto it more realistically. And then I printed out the words that are at the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, your name to be breathe free. That little poem that us old people learned in elementary school. And I printed both the Statue of Liberty and the poem on some rice paper. And I'm using the wet brush technique to kind of tear this apart, because normally with napkins and rice paper, a rougher edge blends into your background better than a cut edge, which is true. It totally does. That being said, this white rice paper did not blend into my blue background at all. Like there's no hiding that is not the same color. I did need to kind of trim up the bottom a little bit, and there's a little piece on the top that's kind of hanging weird that I trimmed off. But I did add another layer of that matte fluid medium onto my art journal page, and then I stuck this little poem right smack dab down in the middle-ish, and I say middle-ish because we're not measuring, of that page, and then very carefully used some of the same fluid medium to go over the top of it. I got a new printer. My toner printer, it died. Like, we had printed so many copies on it that it was saying we have to service our drum, and the servicing of the drum was more expensive than buying another printer, even if we bought another laser printer. So instead we went with that tankless, or the cartridgeless, where the ink tanks, and I didn't know how they were going to stand up to the liquid medium on the rice paper. So I put a lot on the bottom, but not as much over the top because I didn't know if it was going to bleed the ink. And there are some places where the blue from the background kind of bleeds through the black writing, which I thought was interesting. On the Statue of Liberty, I felt like the margins were too big, and so I trimmed them off with scissors. And you can see that very clearly the scissor cutting is a harsher edge to kind of blend, but that's okay. I wasn't trying to disappear the Statue of Liberty. In fact, I wanted the Statue of Liberty to be like the icon of freedom on my page. So once we have that all glued down, we're going to go ahead and zoom through the heat setting part. And then I decided to pull in that stencil and the archival ink and kind of go around the edges of my rice paper. Kind of blend in those torn edges just a little bit more. I also was not super in love with the taupey color of the number washi tape. So going over that with the blue archival ink, I like that better. Let's just go there. I like that better. So I'm going around the edges with the clouds, and I'm going over the washi tape with the clouds and the ink, and that kind of pushes them back a little bit farther, and I liked that. Now, for the illumination part, I decided to add fireworks because freedom, the Statue of Liberty, July equals fireworks in the US, right? I'm just saying, it does. I have this layered fireworks stamp set from My Favorite Things, and I did not layer them. I just I grabbed the four largest ones and some ink stamp blocks. That's the word I'm looking for, stamp blocks. And picked up all of the stamps and then prepared to do some heat embossing. So in order to do heat embossing, you have to have a sticky ink. So I grabbed my Versamark. I also put a piece of scratch paper down, although I grabbed a coffee filter as well. I used my anti-static powder tool because this embossing powder is going to stick to everything, and I only want it to stick to the stamped image. So I stamped up one stamp, and then I pulled out a coffee filter to catch the embossing powder because I thought that might be a little bit easier since I'm going through multiple colors of embossing powder. And in real life, as well as on the video, that yellow embossing powder is not super noticeable. It's just not. The orange is better and the red is better. The yellow is just kind of, it's there, right? It's there. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's not meant to be the thing you see first. It's meant to be a part of the picture in its entirety, and it works for that. Also, the yellow and the orange embossing powders are a wow embossing powder, but they're not a detail embossing powder. They're more for thicker lines and mixed media work than they are for stamping. The red one is a Ranger, and I think it is a detailed one. It's one I use at Christmas time a lot, and it works really well for detailed images. So I'm just continuing. I ended up with, 5 or 6 different firework stamps on the page that I added with the different colors of embossing powder. That's the word. And I stamped them all before I did any heat setting. Because I'm not mixing them, I can put them back in. And if the ink dries before you set the embossing powder, it could not stick. But I wasn't really worried about that. You know, if it didn't stick perfectly, it didn't stick perfectly. I was okay with that. So I have the first 4 down. I decided to add a couple more. I went with another yellow one, I think I did 2 of each color. So I added 2 more this time, a yellow one and another orange one, I think. And again, the yellow is not great. I think that if I really wanted those firework stamps to stand out, I probably would have had better luck using a metallic embossing color, like silver or gold or copper. But I like the fireworks that are all the colors. So, and a white embossing powder would not really have worked because it's got that white background. So I went with the colors and it works. So now that I have everything all stamped out, I can go ahead and heat set those in the embossing powder. And the page is done, right? I'm going to sign it, and I'm dating it July, even though I made it in August, because this is the July prompts. I am going to use my 3-hole punch to punch holes in my page, and then I will grab some liquid glue and my prompt card and flip it over and add the prompt card to the back of my page. That way I will always remember when I look back in my art journals what inspired this art journal. And then, as kind of a last thought or a second thought, I put some Scotch tape down over those pieces of washi tape that were hanging over. I was a little worried they'd rip off. So here is my art journal page for the July Mission Inspiration prompts. I hope you enjoy it. I will link that group down below. Thanks for hanging out with me. I have a couple other videos here I think you will enjoy. I've also added that subscribe button. Please subscribe if you have not. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video. Leave me a comment down below and tell me if you love your 4th of July, and have a really fabulous day.